Hello folks, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another One Piece review. This time we're covering manga chapter 1175. So if you have the belief that the previous chapter was a 10 out of 10 epic chapter due to the final panel, again, yeah, you're entitled to that opinion. Me, I stand by what I said. However, this chapter, I will happily say this was close to a 10 out of 10 chapter for me as you're ever going to get. This is a massive upgrade from what we've gotten previously this year, even though it's still early days and we're just in March. But I felt like this was more of an effort by Oda to give us more faster pacing that he said back at Jump Festa than we've gotten in any other chapter this year. Because everything from the opening panel to the very last panel was Oda giving us progression and also following through with actually giving us some exposition on not only the Ragnir but also the squirrel itself, which I thought was kind of interesting that Oda did that. So we'll see how Oda follows that up. But from what I saw, this was more of an epic 10 out of 10 chapter, as close to a 10 out of 10 chapter, and we got more epic panels, in my opinion, than what we got in the previous chapter. Boy, imagine that. Speaking of which, we've got a cover page with the cover request. We've got Sabo and Koala on the cover page. You got 3 koalas on Sabo. Meanwhile, you got 1 koala with Koala herself munching on bananas. It kind of looks like the koala has fangs, the way it's munching it down. Now, the caption reads Sabo's being swarmed by these koalas, but if you look real carefully, it kind of looks like they're just resting on Sabo. And for whatever reason, Koala herself kind of seems amused. Is that some type of innuendo by Oda? I don't know. It's like I'm just putting it out there. Did anybody notice the book that Sabo was holding? What that said or what that was about? Because one, the book was upside down, and two, Sabo's hand is kind of covering the bottom, so it's hard to kind of see the title of it if there is one. So if you notice what that was, let me know in the comments below. So we start off the chapter, and immediately, this is what I said about immediately from the very first panel, we see Sanji freeing Robin with Diablo Jamba. So Robin is finally freed from the thorns, hooray! And Nami's response is kind of like relief, but it's also echoing what the entire fandom is feeling right now after a month. And Robin's like, it's too soon to celebrate, and Sanji notices the haki of Loki as well as the Raw, because we cut to the West Village, and that's where I guess the residents, I guess that's where the parents and the relatives of the kids, along with the kids themselves, are still wrapped in the thorns, by the way, but they're still alive, of course. They've been dropped off by Loki, and you got the villagers telling Loki, hey, you want to take these children away because it's still too dangerous for them. Loki says, they hopped onto me, not my problem. I love how you, throughout all of this, you got Luffy on Loki along with Ragnir. You can barely see Ragnir, but he's there too. And he's noticing Zoro, and he's like, oh, it's Zoro! While he's resting on Loki. Jaro goes on to say that the kids of Elbaf are safe. Nami and Robin are kind of relieved at this point. Also, Jinbei's there. Did anybody else notice, though, that Sanji and Usopp was kind of absent from that panel? I don't know. Was that deliberate by Oda, or is that just kind of like Oda focusing on Robin and Nami more? But you got Jinbei there too, so I don't know. I don't want to like repeat or rehash everything I said, because I said this enough about Robin and Usopp when it comes to Elbaf. Now that they're free, it's just on the follow up with Oda. You got Zoro noticing Loki in his Needhog form, and you got Luffy like, yep, that's Loki, alright. But I love how Luffy's like, Zoro, I trust you. You got this area. I'll leave it to you. Zoro's like, that's not a problem. But I love how Zoro's actually describing Luffy in his giant form, even in Gear 5th. So it's not the fact that Luffy's small, it's just Loki is so damn huge that it's barely noticeable. Meanwhile, you got Saint Summers back in the act because he's super salty about Luffy thwarting his attempts to traumatize these parents and kids. Now he tries again and relatives again because they can't fight back because they're still wounded. Then you got the children who trying to act like shields to protect them, which is kind of cool. But obviously you know where that was going, but I'm glad Oda didn't waste the entire chapter on this. So again, this is what I talk about. We get progression and pacing while increasing the stakes, but it's not dragged out. That's what I was hoping for in the previous chapter, and that's what we got here. Because you got someone's like about to launch his rapid fire thorn launcher. Doesn't matter because Zoro cuts that shit super fast, and he cuts the thorns so he doesn't touch them. Then Luffy comes in. I'll get to that in a minute, but with Zoro in the act, I don't think that's too much of a coincidence considering the comparisons to Rayleigh. But he didn't launch the attack on Saint Summers, it was Luffy, but he did play a role in clearing the air for Luffy's attack. And it's going to be very interesting when this eventually comes out in the anime, because obviously it's hard to judge through one panel, but I'm curious how fast those attacks are. It kind of gives us a hint of how fast Zoro is when it comes to dealing with a Holy Knight. So I just thought that was kind of interesting to highlight. Then, speaking of highlight, I love how Luffy's got Saint Summers in his target. He's eyeing up with Saint Summers. Then he launches a sick attack. So first off, he comes in like a boss, like in Gear 5th. He grabs a hold of the lightning similar to what he did in Wano. He uses the lightning and grabs a hold of it. Then if you notice, he calls his arm around the lightning. It's almost like he coated his arm in not only arm and haki, but also the lightning as well for this upcoming attack. And you see Saint Summers' face like, oh shit, this time he's not escaping this. You got Ripley looking on. Luffy launches a Booming Dawn Thor rifle. We got one of two attacks. Loki unleashes his attack by the end, but I thought this was actually the better attack in my opinion. But it nails Saint Summers, and boy, his head got cleaved in two, and it looks like that's pretty much it for him. If that is it, good. If it's not, then I guess we'll see real quick. But so the thorns around the kids are finally undone, so they're not bound by the thorns anymore. The parents should be good. The parents and relatives should be good to go as well. We got Chopper and Scopper looking on as this seeing Loki in this form kind of triggers a flashback for Scopper because Ja Rule goes on to mention about the mythological dragon fruit. Is confirmed now that the devil fruit that Loki has, or the legendary rare devil fruit, is a dragon fruit. So, if again another comparison to Kaido, even though I thought it's interesting that Kaido got the fish fruit from swiping it from Big Mom. Meanwhile, you got Loki here is more of a dragon than Kaido is. Not saying he's better by any means. I'm just saying, like, Oda's doing everything to give you the notion that, hey, Loki's more of a dragon than Kaido is. I don't know if it's that deliberate, but that's the way I perceived it. So it's a mythological dragon fruit. Go figure. So this scene in this flashback, and honestly, this was actually the best part of the entire chapter for me personally. A, because I'm a stickler for Thor, and B, I kind of have a soft spot when it comes to the gods and goddesses of the Norse mythology, so this is right up there. So the first thing this does is mention the height and the reason for his Needhog form being so damn big. The size of the creature is relative to the initial size of whoever ate it. So since Loki is already so damn big anyway, and people have already made the comparisons to the height of Loki and Kaido, so yeah, so the bigger the person, the more humongous the creature will be once they reveal that form. So that's pretty much simple physics. But then Shanks goes on to say, so the fruit was forbidden because of its immense power. So this scene does one of three things. So the second thing this does is kind of like foreshadows the Loki's final attack before the end of this chapter, because it goes on to say, they say that this dragon breathes lightning. Garo goes on to say, not exactly, it's just been protected by Ragnir, which we already knew this. But now he also dives into the lore of Ragnir. This is where the influence of Thor comes into play, because Jaro goes on to say, in Elbaf there's a legend about a god of war who fought with Ragnir. It is said that he took the form of the giant dragon and locked horns with the sun god. He was accompanied by a completely loyal partner, the ice squirrel Rataskale. Pretty much the name for the squirrel, so that's cool. Again, another tie into Norse mythology, because the Ratatoskir is pretty much, along with I believe the eagle alongside Nidhogg actually reside within the Yggdrasil, the world tree itself. That follows in line with what we got here, because Nidhogg is the form of apparently the god of war who previously had the devil fruit before it was passed down. Now Jarrod goes on to say the Rataskir, the day that his master died, came to possess the weapon Ragnir itself. So that explains why he was able to, I guess, transform itself into the weapon. and awaits his master's return. Also, the legend goes, because that doesn't really play into effect anymore, because Ragnar already chose Loki. So we've got the nightmare creatures appearing before Chopper and Scarpa. Loki appears out of nowhere, and did you notice how the nightmare creature Needhog, the Timu Needhog, is like trying to flee from it as well? You got Loki with it in its sights. He's about to open fire and unleashes the attack Thrudheim to wipe out these creatures. I'll get to that. I'll get to the name of the attack in a minute, but you got Emu / Gunko looking on, and Emu seeing this attack. You got Luffy and the Rataskier on Loki, as Loki is obliterating these nightmare creatures. Then you got Gunko / Emu looking on. That's an epic panel of Gunko, I'm just saying. But the Emu is finally realizes, oh, the Needhog, it was here all along. And that's how Oda ends the chapter. I don't know about anybody else when it comes to this scene involving Emu. This was not the same look that Emu gave when Joy Boy unleashed his Conqueror's Haki during the ending of Egghead Island. Just saying, like this, I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but this expression from Emu is like, okay, this is Needhog's here. It's been here all along. Now Emu's locked in. That's the vibe I get. I don't see a look of intimidation here from what we got involving Joy Boy's Haki. This is a completely different vibe than what I got, which is great because it doesn't seem like Emu sweats Loki or Luffy, or aka Joy Boy, in this situation, at least not right now. As far as the name of the attack, Thrudheim, there's a lot of meanings. Again, you want to talk about the number of references to Thor without actually giving us the name of Thor itself. First off, you got Ragnar, which is the references to the Millionaire. Check number 1. Check number 2, and then you also got the God of War moniker. You've guessed it, is also a moniker that Thor goes by. Also, Odin and Tyr also go by the name of the God of War as well. So another reference. The other reference is obviously Thrudheim, the name of the attack from Loki. So Thrudheim actually translates to World of Strength, which is actually the name of the domain or the realm that Thor comes from within Asgard. And actually Thrud is actually the name of Thor and Sif's daughter. So again, if you want to tie that in too, you can. Also, the chapter itself was a massive improvement in my opinion, from what we got on previously this year. This felt, like I said before, this felt more like an effort from Oda to really heighten up the pacing here, to amp up the pacing to more lightning fast from what we got previously. So that's all I can ask for. On top of that, he started off very strong with Robin being freed, which is something we've all been waiting for the past month. Now, it really depends on the follow-up from Oda. Like I said before, I don't want to harp on this too much because I've talked about this enough when it comes to Robin and Usopp. As far as Usopp's concerned, it's now or never. That's all I'll say. Now, the other reason why Oda gave us the Ja Rule explaining Loki's form, he did this because obviously he mentioned that Nika and the previous God of War, which again I'm surprised he didn't literally blur out the name Thor because everything else is just pretty much a reference to him. But they clashed every now and then. The vibes I get, I don't know if anybody else, it kind of seems like the Roger Whitebeard dynamic when it comes to like the previous God of War and Nika, or Joy Boy in this case. But the main reason why Oda did this, not only to highlight the attack and the size of Loki as well as its form and the importance of its form, but also to reveal the fact that this is a different day and age. Like, they're not at odds with one another. They're going to be fighting together to protect Elbaf. That's been the constant theme that Oda's been following through since the moment Oda introduced the children. This is where it was leading to. Like, Oda and Luffy are going to lead the way, alongside with Haradin, are going to lead the way for the next generation that's going to lead Elbaf into a better future. That's been the theme from the entire get-go. Other than the fact that Oda's a fan of Thor, apparently Oda's a fan of Thor, which I am too, but I mean, you talk about the references for days without actually mentioning the name Thor itself. As far as Gunko / Emu versus Luffy and Loki, I don't know how soon that's going to be. It kind of looks like Oda just like wrapped up the business with Saint Summers. If that's, like I said before, if that's the case, great. If not, I guess we're going to find out who Saint Summers goes to as far as like Sanji or Zoro. But if it is, great. I'm not going to complain. But it is kind of out of left field. So if that's the case, then so either Saint Summers is done from this arc and we won't see him again, or he's literally done for good. So we'll have to wait and see. But with this, it kind of like, well, who does Saint Killingham go to at this point? Because if Luffy dealt with Saint Summers, then you would automatically think that Sanji has to deal with Saint Killingham, right? Because Zoro kind of technically helped out with not only Dory and Brogy, but also with Saint Summers. Like I said, you could also make the ties to Rayleigh as well, since he also dealt with Saint Summers back in the day. Even though he technically didn't attack him, but he was also involved. A lot of people thought that Saint Summers was going to go to Sanji. That still could be the case. Get Saint Killingham versus Sanji, which I would not mind either. That'd be out of left field and kind of different from what we was expecting. Or we may just not get Sanji in a fight at all. Our training arc at the end of Elbaf before we start talking about Sanji unlocking Conqueror's Haki, because at this point I don't really see it, because he already undid the thorns for Robin, which, like I said before, are great. We'll have to wait and see how Oda follows that up. But with that, that's kind of been resolved here. So what else is there for Sanji to do? Now, when it comes to like Loki, I don't want to dash anybody's hopes here. When it comes to like Loki fighting in this form, I truly believe the reason that Oda gave us this attack, because I don't think Oda's going to have Loki draw Loki fighting in this form. He's way too big. Now, a couple of things come to mind here. He could do that and actually go overtime and give us a fight involving Loki in this form. If Oda's going to like speed up the pacing here, then I can honestly see him having Loki fight in his normal form, which I won't mind, because that's also just as hype. Or, and I've said this before, like Loki's going to reveal a hybrid form, which would kill two birds with one stone, because at the same time it'd be a huge reference to Kaido, but it would also help Oda draw Loki fight against Gunko even more. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. There's a possibility. It's a mythological dragon fruit, so I don't know. Will we get a hybrid form from Loki? It's possible. In fact, that's my main prediction. If we don't get to see Loki fight in this Needhog form, then he's definitely got a hybrid form in the works. Like I said earlier, I did see Emu sweat this attack. Now, that could be a different story in the next chapter, but right now it doesn't seem that way. And Brook really could be the determining factor here, because we haven't seen Brook in a while, so that could also play a role in this fight. But we know it's about to go down. Gunko versus Loki and Luffy. Like I said, do you think it's possible that Oda actually will have Loki fight in this form, or go back into his normal form? Or is Loki going to reveal a hybrid form, and that will kill two birds with one stone? And the influence from Norse mythology continues. For me, that was the highlight of the chapter. But this chapter overall, I thought was more of an epic chapter than what we got previously this year. So before I wrap up this review, it seems like there's word on the town is like Oda's got a massive new project in the works, and we don't know much about it. It's going to be teased in the next issue of Shonen Jump, so we're going to get a better idea of what Oda's cooking in the next issue of Shonen Jump. But as of right now, we don't know much about it. For all we know, it could be something referencing to the One Piece remake. It could be something to do with the movie that's apparently in the works, or it could be a new game, or it could be a part of a new popularity poll that Oda's got in the works. We don't know. I imagine the colour spread is going to give us some tie-in here, because we've got a colour spread in the next chapter coming. But those are my thoughts. Please tell me yours in the comments below. That's going to do it for you guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, you guys know what to do. Hit that thumbs up. I appreciate that. I appreciate your support when it comes to these One Piece reviews. Take it easy, guys. Bye.